for public defenders, and these standards need to be incorporated in your ordinance and then also reflected in your contract with your public defender. You have a copy there of the standards, and you can see that they describe the caseload limits of the public defender. It describes the qualifications of training that the public defender must have, how attorneys in the office are supervised, evaluations. There's requirements for reporting back to the city and as well to the court. And this is something that we are asking that you adopt now for use next year. The Washington Supreme Court has made this effective January 1 of 2015. We will need to also discuss this with your public defender and try and incorporate this into your existing contract. Do you have any questions?
Do we know, based on the guidelines here, if the current public defender is the 400 caseload, 400 maximum caseload?
I can tell you that the contract that you have signed with your public defender does not in any way mention any of these things. So that's something that we're going to have to discuss with the public defender.
But the work that he's actually doing, or she's actually doing, do we know that, does it exceed that?
Well, the caseload limits in here are not just for the city of Pacific. If she's working for other cities, it would be a combined caseload limit. So I can't tell from your contract, there's nothing in there that talks about how many cases that she's working on with other cities. It doesn't talk about the rest of her practice. It doesn't discuss what she does with regard to training, and this requires, a certain number of hours that she has to complete in training every year. So these things are really things that should be made in amendment to your contract.
I guess what I was getting at is, has anybody talked to her to see if she would exceed this, or, does she fit this based on her opinion?
I haven't discussed it with her yet, but she's going to have to fit this. If she doesn't, then you need to contract with someone else who will fit this. Because these are not discretionary.
If this is not discretionary on our part and we have an existing contract, what if our existing council does not want to change the contract midstream? What are our options? Are we in the old contract until it expires even though it doesn't comply, or do we somehow breach the contract and have to set a new one?
Well, I think this is not only a requirement for the city, but also for the public defender. So I don't think that you have the discretion to just say, public defender, we want you to ignore the law and continue on with your old contract.
Okay.
There's a possibility that the city could be sued if you don't comply with this, and that's a significant, exposure to the city that you don't want to encounter. This is, I should say, this is part of the reason why the Supreme Court came up with these standards was as a result of a lawsuit against the city, and the court found out that, how overburdened the public defender was, and the court decided to establish these standards.
And who feels most likely she's aware of these changes that are being made? So we're hoping that she will have taken her CLE to comply with these?
I can tell you that in the other cities that I work for, the public defenders have definitely come forward and asked for amendments to the contract, because some of these things may require that you pay additional amounts, because depending on, how many more people you have to hire in their office or whatever.
Right, but my question is most likely the public defender's office is aware of this, and they will be hopefully looking for CLE courses to cover this, correct?
Oh, I would think so.
Okay,
I mean,
so then she's aware, so.
She should be.
Okay.
If I'm aware of it and I don't practice in this area, she should be.
Well, if I'm incorrect, it's 80 hours of CLE every 2 years, correct, for an attorney?
In these requirements here, it's not that strict. The requirements that on page 5, you can see in 070, the 6, B6, it says complete 7 hours of continuing legal education within each calendar year.
Just on this one particular.
And courses related to public defense practice. That's for compliance with these standards.
Right, okay.
She may have additional CLE credits in order to keep her license, like I do.
Right.
contract, but not only are the cities bound by this, but the attorneys are as well, right?
Right.
So it doesn't, I mean, they need to be compliant with the law regardless of what our contract,
Right.
any contract with the place.
Yeah, right, because they could get into trouble too.
Right, a lot of the questions are moved because it's a requirement on their end
Right.
as well.
Yeah, and this thing was, I mean, this was not something that we made up. I mean, this was just copied straight from the standards that were adopted by the Supreme Court. Yeah.
And when was that?
Well, the Supreme Court came out with this, I think, like in September, but then there was some discussion about whether or not the standards were going to change and whether they were going to be effective on January 1st. So that's why it was so long in coming to you.
So this is new, this isn't like 3 years old?
No, I mean, this was
Okay.
in the last year. But, you know, they said, here are the standards, and then in September they said, we're going to amend the standards, and we're going to tell you when we're going to have them done, and then we were waiting, and then, you know, so I'm
And now
sorry.
they're done?
Now they're done, they're going to be effective on January 1st.
Okay.
A last question is, the problem that I can foresee here is, who has the burden of proving caseload? Is it the defense attorney or the city in defending against the overburdening issue? I mean, if we're contracting for services, and we're contracting with a public defender that may be contracting our services to other cities, are we obligated to find out what the caseload is, or are they supposed to provide that on their own?
As you can see from,
Where's the accountability?
yeah, look at page 3, section 030C, and it says, public defenders providing services by contract shall quarterly certify their compliance with the standards for indigent defense by filing a certificate of compliance as required by blah, 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 and then it's filed with the court.
So it's with the court, not with us. So
Yeah.
So compliance is with the attorney, not the actual jurisdiction.
Right, and then there are other, if you look on page 4, section F, 040F, says monthly reports shall be provided by the public defender to the court administrator. The report shall identify the number and types of case assigned, attorney hours. I mean, they really have to do their reporting as well.
Okay.
Do you have an estimate how much more this could cost us?
I don't know because I don't know what your public defender's caseload is like. I know in the other cities that I work for, the public defenders were contacting the cities before this ordinance was put in front of the city because they already had an idea of how much more they thought it might cost, and I haven't heard from your public defender. So after tonight, I'm going to give her a call. I just got her contract tonight from Richard.
On that, F on page 4, the second sentence of that paragraph, is something been accidentally left out of that? It's not a complete sentence. The report shall identify the number and type of cases assigned, attorney hours, case disposition, the case count year-to-date, and cases which the public defender has been assigned a higher case count. Is there an in missing in that case?
Oh, yeah.
In which?
It should be in which the public defender has heard.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something. Any further council discussion? Council pleasure?
Could you use your microphones, please?
Next item, King County Waste Reduction and Recycling Program Grant Agreement for 2015-16, Resolution 2014-220. Oh, I think so, going through the packet.
Superman.
Okay, so discussion item first then, all right.
So, the waste agreement, or the waste committee, solid waste committee has been meeting with waste management. I think a couple meetings ago, we extended our contract out 6 months to allow for negotiations to take place. This is the basic framework of what we're trying to accomplish. We wanted to bring it to council to see if it's a direction that you want. Now that we've got a little more detail, this is the direction we're kind of headed. We'll get more specific during after, at the end here. So, executive session, we'll get more specific there with it, but if there's any questions that you guys have regarding what we're looking at. So when you look at new services, what we're looking at is trying to standardize our waste collection in the city. So we want to go to, we're going to embed everything into one bill. We're going to provide everything based on input from staff, problems that we're seeing throughout the city. We have a mandatory waste collection, but we don't have mandatory recycling or mandatory yard waste. And what we're finding is garbage piling up still and yard waste being dumped in public areas. So what we want to do is embed it, make it mandatory, like what was presented in the proposed ordinance. So while we put that proposed ordinance on hold, we do want to probably bring that ordinance forward with language similar to that. What we'll get are carts provided so that no one will have to provide their own carts anymore. We're still looking at services similar to what we're being provided now. The minimum will still be 10-gallon cans, but you'll have recycling and yard waste provided as well. We're looking at default cart sizes of 96 gallons, so it's the big ones. Recycle containers right now are 64 gallons, so you'll get a little bit more, 50% more capacity there. Yard waste containers, if those containers are too big for people, they can request smaller containers, but that's going to be the default container unless you request otherwise. There's benefits to it. One, there's more efficiency in the garbage collection. So if anyone's seen the newer garbage trucks come around, they have arms that come out, pick up the cans and dump them so that the drivers don't have to get out and dump it themselves. So it's going to reduce their injury. It's going to help their injury prevention. You get more weight now in your can because of that. So you'll be able to throw away some heavier items. We're going to look at something that's really not written into here is how multifamily is run right now. We're looking at trying to get recycling throughout the city, so we want to come up with a public education and outreach at the bottom, but we've got issues with some of our multifamily dwellings where they don't have proper capacity, and one of the reasons is they don't do any sort of recycling. So if we can get them to start recycling, we might get those areas cleaned up and get rid of some of the nuisance calls that staff has been receiving, trying to get things cleaned up in town. We're looking at special collection events, so 2 of them, one Christmas tree collection every year, and styrofoam collection, probably around Christmas time, around the same time. That's when we have the most styrofoam. That tends to clog up our garbage system, and if anyone's seen during inclement weather how styrofoam and styrofoam peanuts end up all around town. See why we're looking at trying to clean that up a little bit. We still maintain our spring cleanup at the curb. We still get our facilities taken care of, and our senior discounts still in place. And so what you see are, discounts everywhere, except when you get down to people who only do garbage only, they'll see a slight increase just due to the fact that they're not currently receiving recycle or yard waste services. If you had any questions, Laura's here to answer any questions you might have about the types of services that we've discussed.
Questions? What is single stream recycling?
Everything goes in one cart, so all the fiber and the plastics and tin, aluminum, glass is all mixed into one cart. You don't separate.
We're gonna have 3 carts now.
Garbage, recycle, yard waste.
Okay, and it says here that we're going to be decreased.
Yeah, so this, like this A, under residential customer service examples, this is an example, if you currently have a 32-gallon can, it's a customer-owned can for your garbage, you have a 64-gallon cart for recycle and a 96-gallon cart for yard waste. What you're currently paying, you will see a decrease, and you will go from a 32-gallon customer-owned can to a waste management provided 35-gallon cart. And your recycle will increase to a 96-gallon cart. So you'll increase your capacity, And then the next one is the same sort of scenario. Now it's just a 64-gallon garbage cart. With the recycle yard waste, you have a decrease there also, and you'll be given a new 96-gallon recycle cart. So those scenarios go
Right.
on down like that.
Okay, so I guess what I'm basically asking is, we're going to get more services, and it's going to be at a less cost to the customer.
I know.
I'm finding that hard to believe, but okay.
We have.
One of the
we have
reasons
talked a
that
lot
was
about
like that is,
We've had a request that you take this with you.
to kind of help answer that question, Katie, what we have now are subscription services.
Right?
Subscription services are paid individually, and when you do individual services, it costs more.
Right.
So if we combine everything together, we're able to see cost reductions because of basically volume.
Yeah, and it's spread across.
Okay, one other question I have is, Bellevue, we had these 3 carts, and I actually saw garbage men take and hurl things out of the cans that didn't belong in the garbage can. Are you going to have a garbage Nazi running around town and?
No, we don't. And we don't hurl things out of the cart either.
Okay.
So we typically, if there is something.
I had a piece of box thrown at my house.
Oh, I'm sorry. We typically, if we see something in the yard waste cart or the recycle cart that doesn't belong there, or even the garbage cart for that matter, we use what we call those tags, and they should be using them today in your community also. So if you're putting something in there that doesn't belong, which it's got to be pretty bad, they'll mark it, and they'll leave it on your cart for you, and they'll let you know exactly what was in there that didn't belong in there. So we try to educate you and not just throw everything back in your front lawn.
Well, one last question, I'm done. We currently have the yard waste cart and the, what size cart? I don't know, it's great for garbage. It's not the real big garbage, it's the medium-sized garbage.
So there's like the 35, and
There's
then
the big yard
64,
waste,
that's
and
a
then-
96,
Okay, and then there's the garbage can we have is smaller than that.
64.
So are you gonna complete those up and give us all 3 new ones, or are you just gonna throw into your,
You'll get, your yard waste will stay the same, your recycle will increase to 96-gallon, and if depending on what you have for the garbage, if your garbage is 64-gallon cart, it'll stay.
Okay.
If it's a 32-gallon can, and
No,
then
it's
you
not
bought,
yours.
okay, then the garbage cart will
So
stay.
basically, we'll be just, the people who have the service will just be receiving the,
The increase in the recycling,
we don't have a
capacity.
recycle cart, we just have a
Oh.
garbage cart and a,
So you'll get a recycle cart.
exactly, okay. That's it.
Yeah, everyone will end up with a recycle cart and a yard waste cart. And if you have your own can that you own, you'll get a new cart. So then you don't have to worry about buying or replacing it. We do all that.
So another benefit that we saw in embedding this stuff is that people have recycling available, and a lot of people are in cans that are bigger than what they have. Now you have an incentive
Right,
to reduce the size of your garbage can and recycle,
right.
so that you can get a lower rate.
And you say everything can go, it's a combined, so you can put foil, glass, tin, plastic,
Yeah,
all in the same.
all in one bin. So yeah.
And they provide a list of what
Right.
is acceptable and what's not.
And does it all have to be pre-rinsed and washed? No?
We like it to be rinsed, so we don't like it when it's like your spaghetti sauce bottle and you haven't rinsed it.
Okay.
It helps everything down the line,
Okay.
mostly once it gets to the plant for processing,
Okay.
keeps rats and stuff away.
Cat food can, we don't have to rinse that out.
What?
We don't have to rinse the cat food can
Oh,
out?
no, I would rinse that.
Oh,
The
Yeah.
thing about recycling is, we just heard a company that takes the yard waste talk about the
Right.
pollution effect.
Right.
The things that
The
they have.
same thing happens with recycles. One thing you need to understand about recycles, what keeps the prices down is recyclables, a lot of them have value, and so they're sold.
Right.
The dirtier it is, the less valuable it is. So then the more it would cost to get picked up. So,
And then they separated the plants between the
Yeah.
plastic plastic
Yeah.
and the green.
We have what we call J&K Recycling down at Tacoma Tide Glass, that does all of our processing, and always welcome for a visit if you'd like to come down and tour. It's big and loud.
The other benefit to this contract is now brings Pierce County into the fold, away from, now we have a single source collector instead of having two separate collectors, one going to Pierce County landfills, and one coming to King County landfills, when we're required by code as a King County city to have all of our trash disposed of in King County. It brings us in compliance with King County.
I have a question about the spring cleanup. Is that gonna be, you put anything you want out on the curb?
It's what you're doing today, and I apologize, I don't know all the details offhand. So there's no change to what happens today with that, so I don't know if it's limited to.
I've missed out on it, so I don't know why.
I don't think you're not.
Usually a couple weeks, they put a list out.
I just trained.
Well, hopefully, we're gonna do, well, our intention is to do a better job in educating, and that's part of the, expanded public education and outreach, is to be, more defined in letting you know about those programs and what's available, so not only residentially, but commercially and multifamily, a lot more education.
So you're still gonna go quarterly?
Yes, for
So
residential,
is this a quarterly decrease or a monthly?
monthly.
So this person's bill would be $30 cheaper.
Mhm.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
a savings of $120 a year.
And, okay, and these decreases are based on that the whole city is contributing, but our apartment complexes, they're still not in on this, are they?
Well, commercial and multifamily will see a decrease in their rates also. And then on your multifamily, we're going to do cart-based recycling program for them, so it's not an additional cost, just like residential. They'll have the availability to do that. If they need something bigger, when you get into the steel containers, the 1 yard on up, those will have a cost to them, but if they can, manage with cart system, then that's just part of the price structure.
The Cobble Court has a big,
Oh, yeah, they're huge. They have a garbage
Compact.
compactor.
Yeah.
That gets hauled off and you bring in a new one.
there's a,
Oh, well, they just dump it,
Oh.
the compactor.
yeah, they just come, yeah.
But we could put carts out there depending on, what they have for space. I don't know if they have enclosures where, the residents come and dump their garbage. Usually tow carts, they get towed to the compactor and dumped. Or if all the residents go straight to the garbage compactor.
The
and dump.
residents go straight
To the compactor? Okay.
They have a code and they go
Okay.
in.
So, we could put carts over there by where the garbage compactor is. Sometimes it just takes somebody going out there and doing an audit to see what the footprint is of the facility, to see where we can place carts and, how the trucks can access. So,
Because there's roughly around 1,500 people that
yeah,
live in
there's like
that complex.
350 units or something there.
And that would be a really big savings if they were in on the recycling.
Oh, yeah, well, they could do a cart-based recycling program. And the one thing, again, education, and we have to be really good with education with multifamily. It takes a little bit more than residents because sometimes they're not as invested because they're not paying the bill, so they tend to throw things away that shouldn't go in the recycle cart, so it's kind of an education process, too.
Let's see, changing the senior discount to 10%. I noticed our current code requires that to be 15% discount. Do we have
Is that garbage or
Yeah.
sewer?
I think, Josh, that could have, been before we took over the billing, because we've always done the 10%.
Okay.
So it could have been when you guys were doing the billing.
Yeah, our municipal code actually mandates 15% discount, and it has to be not just senior, but also
All kinds of
disabled.
disabled with
Yeah.
low income.
And we'll, how do I want to say this? Whatever we're doing, we'll continue doing. And I thought it was 10%, I double checked it. I might be wrong.
Current code says 15.
I know, well, there's a
Yeah.
lot of things in your code.
Yes, yeah.
So we can adjust that
Yeah.
when
We
we
can-
pass the new
yeah.
code?
Have you
And
had
again,
anybody stand up to say that they're not getting the discount that they've been promised?
I haven't heard anything.
Didn't know it existed. Don't get it. I'm a senior.
To any full-time occupant responsible for payment of city garbage bills, the grant of 15% discount to the otherwise applicable rate if the person is at least 62 years of age and/or is 18 years of age or older and has been awarded in writing 50 cents for a higher disability rating from any state of Washington and/or federal agency program, and needs to be low-income guidelines as determined by HUD. So,
Well, when we took over the billing, anybody that was receiving that discount would have continued to receive that discount, and anybody new signing up for service, it is in our, what we call green pages, where all that information is. So if somebody new was signing up for service, it would be there.
So the question then would be, as council, do we want to, when we write the new garbage code, do we want to go with the contracted agreement of 10%, or do we want to stick with 15, that could affect rates?
I think we're obligated to do.
We're not obligated, because we can change it. We're going to pass a new ordinance that goes with the contract.
So you're going to, well, I don't know if we want to charge the seniors and the low income because we want a cheaper rate. That's,
If I could,
They're probably getting 10%.
I can double check that. You know, I can't do it this very moment, but I can check tomorrow to find out what it actually is and how many customers are actually receiving that.
well, we have one person that said it, you know, she qualifies but didn't know the program existed, so I'm sure there's a lot of them.
Were you, prior to 2 years ago, have you had service for a
I've
while?
had, my parents started service whenever they started having garbage service in the 50s.
Okay, in the
60s,
50s?
50s, yeah.
Well, I'll check, so I apologize, but I mean, like I said, if somebody doesn't tell us, then we don't know either, so.
So that's my question, what's the direction of the council?
It's my feeling that we should leave it at 15%. You know, the seniors and people on fixed income struggle enough as it is, and if it costs me a resident an extra, you know, if you divide it up between however many citizens, an extra 72 cents, let's say $3 a month, I'm not gonna take the money away from senior citizens and disabled people.
I do my own recycling.
That's that.
right, that'll be yard work, like, compost all my own.
So, I mean, the one question that came up was, what's the industry standard? And everything in our area seems to be 5 to 10%, so 15 would be outside of the norm.
How long have we been offering 15%?
The last time council looked at it and tweaked it was Gary's first year on council. So it hasn't been all that long.
7 years ago?
Yeah, 7 years ago, I think the last time. Let's see, 2008, it looks like, was the adoption date for that 15%, and then it was amended in 2012.
I would guess that was the addition of the qualifying disabilities, not the percentage.
And then, yeah, there are other code changes that obviously still have to go along with this, that we're not complying with now anyway, but we're all required to be providing our own cans today, and things like that, so yeah, just some, concordance between the two. Any other council discussion?